This period, Gabby, Kimberly, Maggie, Donna, Waybob, Keith, you have to pick up your purchases first before I let other kids buy stuff. All right, so we're going to be learning about a new comic. We just finished our unit on Me After 5 Minutes. Now we're going to do one called Deep Dark Fears. Deep Dark Fears is a comic made by an artist named Fran Krause, and people submit their fears to this artist anonymously, and they pick the most interesting ones and illustrate it, and also use watercolor. So let's look at some of them. Deep Dark Fears. When I see an old person with a cane, I'm so worried I'll accidentally kick it. I make a point to give them plenty room and stay very far away. Deep Dark Fears. My father said if I lied, the devil would take my tongue. When I was alone, I would test his story with little lies. Later, when it was at night, I wouldn't be able to sleep. Does anyone else's parents tell them little lies like that to like make you be good? Like sometimes parents say you have to stay in your bed and monsters will come. Yes, your parents say that. Or parents say like if you don't brush your teeth, they'll all fall out. Like stuff that's kind of a lie. With cussing, yeah. My parents always said that I had to finish all the food on my dinner plate. There's a plate, there's all this food, you have to finish all of it because if you don't, your husband's face will look like that plate. And I know that a lot of Asian parents, they tell their kids that too. Like other kids have heard it too. Deep dark fears. My grandfather had dirty, dry hands. My sister told me it was from digging graves. It wasn't till I was older that I found out. He just liked gardening. Deep, dark fears. When I haven't put on my boots in a while, I worry that a mouse has made a home inside. Have you ever worried about this? I know some people, they always dump out their shoes to make sure there's no bug in it. Deep, dark fears. When I see a boom gate in a parking lot, I worry I'll walk underneath and it'll bonk my head. Have you ever had this fear that this gate will bonk your head? Deep dark fears. When I fell asleep on top of my arm and I felt the pins and needles, I thought my skin was covered by thousands of invisible ants. Have you ever thought that? My fear is more that my leg or my hand will be stuck like that forever. Like you're 40 and your leg is still asleep. That's a fear I have. Deep dark fears. My mom told me that inside a storage room in our basement, there was a man who was hiding and he would take me away if I didn't sleep. Did your parents tell you anything like this? Or like about kukui? They'd eat you? Deep dark fears. My grandmother told me if you hold in a fart, it will travel up your spine and go into your brain and it will give you bad thoughts. Probably this grandmother just wants you to let it out. Maybe they're just trying to scare kids. Deep dark fears. When I was a kid, my dad always said, if I spilled anything in the kitchen, a soggy hole would appear and I'd fall through. So I always cleaned up my accidents. So again, the artist of these is called Fran Krause, and some of them are their own fears, but some of them are submitted to them by other people who know about his really famous Deep Dark Fears comic. Okay, so I'm going to tell you some of the requirements. Your entire comic should read like one coherent sentence. So even if there were no pictures, this would still read like a coherent sentence. So imagine this without pictures. When I was a kid, my dad always said if I spilled anything in the kitchen, a soggy hole would appear and I'd fall through. So I always cleaned up my accidents. That is a full sentence that's coherent even without the pictures. So your comic should be a coherent sentence with the pictures and without the pictures. Let's look at the previous examples. My mom told me that inside a storage room in our basement there was a man who was hiding and he would take me away if I didn't sleep. So that still makes sense without the pictures. Everyone needs the title, Deep Dark Fears on top. If you want to change it a little bit, talk to me first. Maybe you want to change it to Catherine's Deep Dark Fears or something like that. But everyone needs a title, and the title should be Deep Dark Fears. There needs to be 4 perfect square panels made with a ruler. Today, I'm going to show you how to do that and how to use your ruler to make those perfect panels. As you can see, all of the panels in Deep Dark Fears made by Fran Krause, they are perfect squares, and yours needs to be that way too. And the due date is next Friday, April 9th. Today is check 1. So, before you start making your squares and stuff, you should kind of decide what your comic's going to be about. You can copy one of Fran Krause's. They've done like over hundreds, maybe even thousands on their website. You can see it. But you can also do one based on your own fear. So I'm looking at the do now, and I see that some people wrote that they're scared of heights, cockroaches, lots of insects. Ooh, touching your veins. Yeah, that is weird because there's like blood pulsating through it. Yes, someone's afraid of needles, just like me. Being alone, yeah. So some of the fears can be kind of obvious, like all that stuff you listed. Some of the fears can be, very ordinary, like my fear is failing math. My fear is getting a referral. You can do something outrageous and silly, like the ones that Fran Krause did. So before you figure out which one you're going to do, I would brainstorm how you can turn that basic fear into a coherent sentence. So let's say I'm afraid of fire. So that's only 4 words. So I want to make that longer and more descriptive so that I can fill out my 4 squares. For example, really, the fear of this one was the man, but they kind of fleshed it out and added more facts to it so that it was a more interesting sentence. So I'm going to write, I'm afraid of playing with matches because I'm afraid that if I drop them, I'll start a fire that burns down the whole city and everyone will blame me. So that's still the same fear, but I've made it more interesting. I've added more detail. I've also made it sillier so that it's more fun to draw. Okay. So I'm afraid to play with matches because I'm afraid. Maybe I'll say I'm scared. I'm scared I'll drop them and it'll burn down the whole city. And I will get blamed on the news. Okay, so again, that was my original fear, but now I've made it a more interesting sentence. I'm going to give you 3 minutes to come up with yours, and then we will move on to showing you how to draw boxes and how to start your comic. Someone says, what is Fran Krause's website called? I think if you just Google Deep Dark Fears, you'll find their Instagram. I have also typed it in the chat. So that's the artist name and the name of the title. Yes, Clarissa, you can change the title to that, and that's fine with me. It must be 4 squares, and in 2 minutes, I will show you how to do it. I would say the first step, however, is coming up with the sentence you're going to use in your comic. Because if we just write, I'm afraid of dogs, I'm afraid of spiders, I don't like cockroaches, that's really short. That's not going to be a very interesting narrative. And it will be more interesting to draw if yours is more interesting and a longer, more descriptive sentence with more things, possibilities of things you can draw. So instead of saying, I'm afraid of dogs, I could change it to, I'm afraid of small dogs because when I was little, one of those small fluffy white dogs sank its teeth in my ankle, and no matter how hard I tried to kick it off, it wouldn't get off. So again, you can change your simple fear into something more complex. Yes. Someone says, can you kind of lie about it, exaggerate it? Yes. If it's going to be an interesting picture, yeah, you can lie. If your parents never, did that mental thing with you where they make up monsters, you can make one up for your comic. But I think a lot of parents say that stuff. Okay, I am now moving on. So I've created my sentence, and I have my longer sentence that's basically this, but more descriptive, more words. Okay, so as you notice with Fran Krause's comics, it's title, 4 boxes, and words under each box. Okay, title, 4 boxes. The whole sentence takes up all the words under the boxes. So I'm going to show you what to do. So I'm going to use my whole paper. This is like about computer size sheet of paper. I'm going to measure it out. So this is about 8.5 inches. And this is about
Bless
11.
you.
Okay, so I'm going to put a little line for each inch. This 1 inch, 2 inch, 3 inch, 4 inch. Okay, so I know that I need a space for the title, the first row, and the second row of words. So I think those will be about 1 inch. So if I do that, where this is 1 inch and it says Deep Dark Fears, maybe my boxes can be 2 inches. So title, box, words, 2-inch box, words. But then I have all this extra space, and I don't want to waste my paper, and I want to be able to draw bigger. So what if I made my boxes 2.5 inches? So if I had title, 1 inch, 2.5 inches. So it would be like that instead. Okay, and then another inch here, and then a 2.5 inch box, and then 1 inch for words. That will make better use of my paper. So I'm going to start measuring it out. So again, title here, 2.5 inches for a box, and then another inch for the words, and then 2.5 inches for a box, and then the last inch for words. I'm going to use pencil because I'm going to go over this in marker later. Okay, so now I need to make the lines, so I need to find it on this side too. So 1 inch for the words, 2.5 inches for the box, 1 more inch for the words, 2.5 inches for the box, 1 inch for the words. So remember, there's words under every box. In second period, a lot of kids did not think that there were words underneath, you know, where it says, it wasn't until I was older that I found out he likes gardening. And so they just drew the boxes on the bottom, but then there's no space for the words. It has to be done this way. Okay, now connect. So there's my first space for the title. That's for the top row of panels where the pictures will go. Here's where the words will go. And then here is another 2.5 inches for the box. And then the words finally will take up this last inch. Okay. Now that I've done the across lines, the horizontal lines, now I need to do vertical. So I'm just going to make a straight line. Again, please use a pencil because you'll be going over it in marker later. Okay, so I have this, and since I know that the boxes are 2.5 inches tall, they need to be perfect squares. So they need to be 2.5 inches wide. If you're using a computer-ish size of paper, I suggest you doing it this way too. Okay. I got a dot on the top and bottom. Okay, so now there's a little space in between here. I think I'll make a 1/2 inch space. So starting from this line, 1/2 inches. From this line, 1/2 inch. Okay. So again, my box is 2.5 tall. It needs to be 2.5 wide. Okay. All right, so what I have is 4 perfect squares. I have room for my title, words underneath square 1, words underneath square 2, words underneath square 3, words underneath square 4. Now I need to go over my squares and erase extra lines that I don't need. I used a pencil, or I didn't use a pencil. I made it clear for you to see, but you should be using a pencil so that you can erase. So I'm only going over the lines that I need. If you're using a Sharpie, I suggest using a thin Sharpie because then it'll be more clear. If you use a thick Sharpie, it's easier to make a mistake, especially since, the boxes are only 2.5 inches. Okay, so now what I've created is 4 boxes. I'm going to erase all those extra lines. I have an inch space for deep dark fears. I have an inch space for the words here. I have an inch space for the words here. I only have 1/2 inch in between these squares, which kind of looks like the way Fran Krause did it. So now I need to put my title and determine how to put the words in here. So I have my title. And now I need to look back at my original sentence. So my sentence was, I'm afraid to play with matches because I'm scared I'll drop them and it'll burn down the whole city and I'll get blamed on the news. So let me think of a way that's creative and in a way kind of equal to separate the 4 sections of this sentence. So I'm afraid to play with matches, pause, because I'm scared I'll drop them and it'll burn down the whole city and I will get blamed on the news. So there's 4 sections. I'm afraid to play with matches because I'm scared I'll drop them and it'll burn down the whole city and I will get blamed on the news. So that's 4 sections, but it's still part of the same sentence. Now I'm going to see how to write them underneath. So like most comics, Fran Krause writes in all capital letters. I'm afraid to play with matches is my first. Because I'm scared I'll drop them. And I will get blamed on the news. So I wrote my same sentence. I chopped it up into 4 sections. It still makes sense. I'm afraid to play with matches because I'm scared I'll drop them and it'll burn down the whole city and I will get blamed on the news. And it's logical because here I could draw myself like looking at matches. Here I can show like a match falling on the ground. Here I can show like a fire that's just like growing and growing and like maybe a whole city on fire. And here I can show like nightly news report and like show my name on it. So it's logical. Each box will be interesting because of the way I chopped it up. There's a logical flow with it. Are there any questions about how to do this?